Hey, welcome back to the Stina Show. Happy Thursday. Tonight's guest is one of my favorites, Jess Middleberg, and she's a pediatric psychologist and self-care advocate. Yes, welcome. I haven't been around for 2 weeks. Hey, Jesse, what's up? But here we are. I'm coming for you. I gotta find, there she go.
Yeah.
You made it into the major.
I made it. It's been a long time coming.
You look good with your lime green walls.
I know. I was trying to just get this white background, but, the green had to make it in.
Ashley, hey, what's up, girl?
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, Lucy's here, too.
Let's see. Where's Lucy? Give her a little...
she's about to... You're going to eat dinner right now.
Oh, is she like staring at you like, Mom?
She's like walking over to her bowl, so I'm sorry for the background noise. She starts to eat right now.
That's all right. I love a dog or a pet appearance,
Yeah.
So, welcome.
Thank you.
We met on Birthright, all of us. We all met on Birthright.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, what a life-changing experience that was, right?
It really was. And I think I had gone into it hoping for this like really life-changing experience and had really high expectations. So to have that actually come to fruition and get everything out of an experience that you're hoping to get was super special and it was overwhelming. I think you and I spent a lot of time really leaning into those emotions throughout the trip. But it was such a gift.
It was so much fun. Yeah, it was a gift. I'm happy to have met you there.
Yeah, me too.
And thank you for coming. So let's just dive in because I know you got a lot of good stuff in you. When you were little, did you know you wanted to be in psychology and or self-care?
I didn't. So I actually, you can eat your kibble. You can eat the kibble. This is a work in progress. Sorry. So I grew up horseback riding, and we had an experience where we worked with a kiddo who was in a special kind of school, and he came to us for riding lessons to kind of help cope with certain behaviors that he was in that school for. And I saw how impactful that was, so I pursued a degree in equine facilitated therapeutics. And then, so I became a therapeutic horseback riding instructor for kids with special needs. And that's anywhere from physical disabilities through kind of emotional, behavioral, cognitive disabilities. And so I knew when I was getting ready to graduate, I could have just gone that route, but I wanted to learn more about the students that I would be teaching. And so I could have gone like the OT or PT route for more of the physical disabilities, or I could have gone the more social, emotional, behavioral route and go with psychology. That's what I ended up deciding to do. And I certainly didn't expect, even along the road of my psychology training, to kind of end up to be where I am right now. So right now I'm working with kids who are medically complex in an inpatient rehabilitation hospital. So they have sustained an injury of some kind, or they have a chronic illness, or they were born premature, different medical anomalies. And so I'm kind of there to help them like along with their process of engaging in rehab, because it can be a really scary experience. A lot of them have experienced some kind of trauma, or their families are really traumatized by the kind of injury that the child has sustained, or have the diagnosis that they just received, or things like that. And I think each area of training that I did, I always felt like a piece was missing. And I think this whole like mind body wellness piece that's really embraced in this kind of setting is really what I had been looking for this whole time. And I do want to get back to the equine therapy eventually. But I'm really loving where I'm at right now, because I think that, so many times kids can be labeled, or anybody can be labeled by their diagnosis. So
True.
The diabetic, or the kid who has the TBI or something like that. And it's, especially when I'm working with my kids who have a chronic illness, they're there because they're having a hard time managing their diagnosis, their blood sugar's out of control, and they know that they're there for those reasons. So for me to come in and be another person saying, why aren't you taking care of your diabetes? I'm just another member of the diabetes police. And so it's okay, tell me about who you are, what are the things that are important to you, and how can we make diabetes and taking care of diabetes fit into your life. And so we focus a lot on relationships and different social determinants of health that are impacting them, because nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to just kind of live with a chronic illness and feel like crap all the time and everything. Like, so if it was easy to take care of a chronic illness, they would do it. But there are many reasons why they're not. And so if we're touching on some of those reasons and addressing it, either by processing it verbally or connecting them to community resources, or providing them and their family with education, then it kind of lightens the load a little bit. And then it's like a less resentful process. So kind of helping them to find their own identity within these different labels that are kind of shoved upon them within like the medical realm is super important.
I have a lot of thoughts. I think that label thing is so true. It's like we just slap labels on things when we're so multidimensional, like these poor people who get stuck in these, in these slots. I feel so sad, because then that's the energy that people are putting on them, right? How do you dig yourself out of that focus of light, right? It's like, you're this, you're this. It's like, no, no. Like, how overwhelming is that alone,
Yeah. And reclaiming your own power to say, no, like, I am this, not that, or I'm this more than that. And starting from an early age, like, kids can be mean, and also not necessarily coming from a bad place. So if I have a younger child, as an example, who has diabetes and, they're 10, 11 years old, they don't know that you can't catch diabetes from somebody else. But their friends on the playground are like, oh, you have diabetes? Like, I don't want to play with you because now I'm going to get it. And then they're being bullied, and they're being left out of class parties because they're not allowed to have cupcakes. And it's like, no, you can have a cupcake, and here's how you can do it safely. And here's education that you can tell your friends about. And so they sometimes want to hide the fact that they have diabetes because they don't want their friends to know. They don't want them to feel different. But kind of empowering them to say, like, here's how I can hang out with my friends and have diabetes and do it safely, is more important. And we want our kids to be honest with us. They're, especially like the teenager population that we're seeing, like, I know I'm further from my teenage years than I used to be. But I do recognize that you are engaging in certain things that maybe you're not telling your parents about. So, like, I'm not going to encourage you to do some of those things. But if you happen to be doing some of those things, or you find yourself in a situation where you're doing some of those things, maybe would you be interested in some education on how to make sure that you're staying safe while you're doing it? And what would make you feel more comfortable in talking with your parents about it, and helping to kind of bridge some of those communication gaps at home is super important as well.
Yeah, communication is everything, isn't it? Oy vey,
Yeah.
Wait, So did you, when you were little, have someone guiding you down that path, like like an inspiration or a motivation, like an empathy person, a caretaker, something like that?
So I was super lucky as a kid. So my parents, for better or for worse, from a very young age, encouraged me to voice my opinion. And I think that sometimes they kick themselves for it. Because I always say, you know, if you're asking, I'm going to share it with you. I'll be respectful, but I'm going to share it. And so, like, from a very young age, I was told that I was, like, allowed to have an opinion. I was allowed to have a voice. I did have to follow rules in the house, but that my voice, you know, did matter. And my parents got divorced when I was 12. And so, you know, when you have a single parent, sometimes different members of your village step in to kind of help your needs get met. So sometimes aunts or uncles would take me to my riding lessons, or even just people at the barn would listen to me. They were like my second family growing up. And so I had a lot of different adults that stepped up for me to process my parents' divorce or process anything that was going on in my life in a really safe space. And I was also like, so my dad would joke around and call me the lawyer growing up, because if I would hear like my brother or sister getting in trouble for something, and I knew that they were being wrongly punished, like they were not, my parents didn't have the full story, I was like running in there to be like, no, that's not what happened. This happened, and this, and this. And they're like, okay, lawyer. So actually my parents thought I was going to be a lawyer growing up. And I was thinking about that recently, and I said to my mom, maybe I should have been a lawyer. And then I was thinking, you know, and processing, like, and like preparing for today, I think that I am advocating for people's voices still, just in a different context. My grandfather also is like a big inspiration for me. He is a Holocaust survivor. My grandmother also was a Holocaust survivor, and they both told their stories. My grandfather continues to tell his story. He wrote a book. Oh, I have it over there.
Yeah.
Shameless plug. It's called Small Miracle. And you can get it on Amazon. But
so wild.
You know, using his testimony as a witness to kind of talk about his experiences to make sure something like the Holocaust never happens again. So kind of like talking about your experiences and sharing your emotions has kind of always been modeled for me. And my grandparents didn't always talk about their story when they were younger. Like when my parents were younger, it wasn't until they were like in their 60s that they started talking about it.
Wow.
So for me to like embrace their legacy, it's also kind of important for me to make sure that I'm helping others feel like their voices are heard, and to kind of like honor that we have differences, and like we can be sitting in front of each other and like completely different things, or come from very different backgrounds, and we can still respect one another. I had a patient who could not have been more different than me. I mean, from neighborhood to race to religion to like type of music that we liked, every single thing was different. And I remember the first time going in to meeting him, and it was so glaring how different we were. And I was like, how am I going to reach this kid? Like, he is not going to take me seriously at all. And so we use that space to talk about our differences. And like when we weren't talking about what he was going through, if we were kind of running into something, he felt like I wasn't getting him, I'm like, you're right, I'm not getting it, because I didn't So tell me about it. I didn't grow up in that area. I don't talk like that. I don't use that language. I don't listen to that kind of music. So tell me about it. Let's listen to it together. Like, tell me about what that means to you. And so I think treasuring that space of difference and honoring that in somebody else really helps to allow that relationship to blossom a little bit more. And so when I have a parent who says to me, "You're so young, how could you possibly offer me, I don't see a ring on your hand and you clearly don't have children. So like, how could you offer me parenting advice?" You're right. So I'm the professional in my field. You're the professional in your child, and let's meet in the middle. And you tell me what you're looking for, and we can work together to problem solve. So kind of like all of these different things along the way have kind of helped me to really embrace, like, wanting to make sure that people's voices are heard.
So we're going to bounce around because my questions are going to come, but you work in a very difficult place right now, right? Your location.
Yeah.
So what kind, so do people, okay. Let me go. I have too many questions. Okay.
Totally.
Let's just go to self-care because otherwise
challenge both those questions along with self-care.
How do you take care of yourself to take care of others? Let's do that.
So that is like a continued work in progress. And I think over the pandemic that shifted, like, the things that I need to take care of myself in order to take care of others has shifted immensely. So prior to the pandemic, it was a brand new job. It was very exciting. And so that in and of itself was like very much self-care for me. My brain was constantly stimulated. I was energized by the things that I was doing. And then I started at this job in September of 2019. So that shortly into starting that job was when the pandemic hit. And even at, the beginning of the pandemic, I still had a lot of energy. I was going. And then I remember feeling really resentful because, for many reasons, I had been going to work full time, which was a gift in and of itself because there were a lot of people whose lives got turned upside down, didn't have a job anymore. And I was able to provide. My stepdad, who I live with, got very sick. So I was able to, with the support of my mom, I was also able to support my brothers. So it was just the three of us, me and my two brothers here in our house. So I'm like maintaining our house. I'm working full time. I'm making sure that I'm supporting my mom, who's like supporting my stepdad, who's in the hospital. And I'm seeing people making lots of sourdough bread and like picking up all hobbies and embracing working from home. And I was just like, in the beginning, I was very grateful to just still be able to go into work because that offered me a sense of normalcy. Right. I was just like working myself into the ground, like even to the point where they're like, you can get bonus pay if you work an extra this many hours. So I was like, sign me up. I'm done.
Oh my God.
But that's fine. I'll just work 4 10-hour days and then an 8-hour shift. I'll still have my weekends, so I'm not giving up, but I'm going to do it. And I did it for a month, and I was like,
done.
That month, it was awful. So that was not self-care. My bank account was not worth it. So I really started having to learn how to get creative with what self-care means. It doesn't always mean having like a full-on spa day or like going to the beach. Sometimes it means saying no to something you would normally say yes to because you are a pleaser and a giver and you want to do for others all the time. But sometimes you need to say no because it's going to burn you out. And if you only have this much in your cup, and you give that to somebody else, if there's nothing refilling that cup for you, you're going to feel that. And so last spring, I started working with a dietitian. Her name's Erin Kenny. She has a really big platform actually here on Instagram. Her page is called Nutrition Rewired. She's like, she's an absolute gift of a human being. And I remember before working with her, I got a little bit of sticker shock because I was like, oh, this is a lot of money out of pocket.
Mm.
And I asked my mom about it, and she was like, well, do you think you're worth XYZ amount of money? And I was like, well, I think I'm worth more than that. She's okay. Well, and I think you should pay. And so I did, and I met with her once a week for 30 minutes just to go over what our goals were for the week. And I think this also really helped me to really appreciate the work that I'm doing even more, because I started learning firsthand what that mind-body connection really looks like. Because when you're really fueling your body and you're actually taking care of yourself and you're eating right, and by eating right, I don't mean like you're eating green smoothies and like only kale and tofu all day. I mean, you're actually eating breakfast, and you're eating breakfast before you drink your coffee. Coffee is not breakfast.
Damn.
It took me a long time, but I have to tell you, I built that habit. That's like one of the best habits I built for myself, is making sure that I eat breakfast. And I know it sounds so mundane, but I'm not going into work now like running on fumes. I'm going into work with energy. I started, part of my issue is that I was just under eating, not because I didn't want to eat. Your girl loves to eat. But I wasn't making time to eat because I didn't think it was that important, because patient needs would come up or whatever it was. And so now I built in a lunch. And so I forced myself to sit down and I eat lunch.
Oh, Jess joined. So Ashley joined before and Jess joined now. So
Well,
got some good people here. So your nutrition is getting better, and how does that make you feel in all ways?
Yeah, so I have a lot more energy. My brain fog is not nearly as intense. I like meal prepping. I really love cooking. So that in and of itself is self-care for me. I love to bake. You and I have you've been on the phone with me meal prepping before. It's a whole production.
For hours.
But also, like, I saw other things. I was sleeping better. My skin completely cleared up. So just in general, I just started feeling good. And when I was feeling good, I was more motivated. My mental health was better. I wasn't nearly as anxious all the time. And so there's a really important nerve that connects from your brain to your gut called the vagus nerve. And so a part of what happens with that nerve is that's why when somebody's having psychosomatic symptoms, so like when you're anxious or nervous about something and you get nauseous, that's the nerve that's causing that. And that's also why when somebody has poor gut health, that you can see symptoms like anxiety or depression. And when you start to resolve some of those issues, you can remyelinate and help to strengthen that nerve. And then you start to see less of those symptoms. So it's also helpful because then you're not kind of just jumping to slapping on medication. You're fueling your body in the way that you're meant to because you're eating. And you're not adding necessarily anything else. And there's nothing wrong with being on medication if you need to be on medication. But if you're kind of on the fence and you're wanting to try something prior, like this was a really cool way for me to kind of feel it out for myself.
I think that people underestimate the power of food. I think we just like inhale this endless supply. And
Like, because I was going out the last 2 weeks, and my stomach is small. Like, I eat very small portions, and people are like, aren't you hungry? And I'm like, no, like, I eat till I'm full, you know?
Yeah.
And I also try to eat consciously, and it's like, but balance is important. You have to let yourself eat the shit just as much as you eat the good, you know? But I used to have health issues with my vagus nerve where I would like pass out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think back and I'm like, I should have probably have just, it passed, thank God, but just gone to a nutritionist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that simple changes in our food can really make a big deal. Like, we don't realize how powerful our mouths and bodies are, and our bellies, you know?
Yeah, I really learned a lot, and Erin is really a, teach a person how to fish kind of a gal. And so, she didn't just put me into some kind of protocol. She really taught me skills. And so over a year out of her program, I'm still using all of these skills. I still have all the resources she gave me, and I still can reach out to her if I have a question, if I want to book a follow-up. And so it's nice to know that I feel really independent and I have this sense of autonomy, and I don't feel like my body's kind of going out of control. And when I feel like I don't have the answers, I have somewhere to go, which is really special.
Your garden is fire, girl.
Thank you. Thank you. Talk about self-care. That was a great weekend. It was really good weekend. And that was like a work in progress. I have wanted to plant a garden since I was in grad school. My first year of grad school, I had a balcony, and I was like, I'm going to create a balcony garden. And then the summer would get away from me. Next summer, I'm going to have a balcony garden. And I had a balcony every single place I lived. Never started one. And even now, I've been home for almost 4 years. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so I committed by ordering things online. They were at my house, and I knew they would die, and I spent a lot of money on them. If I didn't buy the pots. So it became a giant, like, if you give a mouse a cookie kind of a garden. So, like, if you buy this, then you need that, and then the other thing, and then now I have this huge garden on my deck.
It's huge. But it's beautiful. It's a wonderful garden.
Thank you. Love it. And it's exciting. Like, Lucy and I, my dog, Lucy and I go out in the morning, and we say good morning to our babies. And it's really cool to, like, see the progression. Like, my chives, I have like a little blossom coming up. My calendula is starting to bloom. And so just to kind of like watch the progression over time and to see the growth. Like, I remember being in Israel, and when we took that pit stop, we were driving into the desert on that mountain, and there was like that really treacherous, like, steep we walked up that mountain, and there was this like poppy that was just one poppy that was like
the red one, right? Yeah,
the red one out the side of the mountain. Like, it's like desolate out there. There's nothing. It's like this beautiful metaphor for like life just wants to live, and like it will find a way. Things will find a way to bloom. They'll find a way to grow. Things just want to grow wherever. Like, you look in the cracks of the sidewalk, and like one blade of grass is coming up. Like, things just want to live. And so I was very worried for a long time. Like, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, Want to know if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right. So doing things blindly for me is like so terrifying. But a motto that I've been trying to live by recently is like, do it scared. You don't have to be perfect. You'll figure it out along the way. And so I did a lot of research before growing the garden. I was so worried I was going to plant everything. The next day I was going to come out and it's like all going to be dead. But so to see things, like, even with me being new and not really know what I'm doing, like, still growing, and the birds haven't stolen all the berries off my bushes yet. Like, it's very, very exciting.
Did you see Top Gun or no?
No.
Tom Cruise's quote is don't think, just do.
Mm-hmm.
He says like 35 times, I swear.
I'm working on that. I'm very much an overthinker, so I'm like, oh, I'm overthinking. Oh, just do it.
Exactly.
As far as more self-care, I hired a personal trainer. That is really going out of my comfort zone. Like being this tension, like this is fine with you and me here because it really just feels like you and me. But if you're on like a set somewhere, I'd be like shaking in my boots.
I had a feeling this morning, like 12 hours ago, you're like, I don't feel good. I'm like, chill.
I really did have like a terrible migraine earlier.
Well, because it rained. The weather was not favorable for us today.
It came out of nowhere. So that was self-care too. I let myself not just work through it. I let myself go home.
Yeah, you look rested. You needed it.
But yeah, I hired a personal trainer and I go to the gym where I'm terrified that people are going to be staring at me.
Right?
Because
everyone stares at each other. That's what the gym is for.
What's that?
That's what the gym is for. You all just bored and you're staring at each other, you know?
I don't know what I'm doing. So it's like, it's one thing if people are like, oh, look at her. It's another thing if they're like, she has no idea what she's doing. And it's a virtual personal trainer. So like it gives me workouts to do. I send videos, which that's another thing. Then I have to film myself doing this stuff. And that I also don't like doing. So I'm
virtual personal trainer. I never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a new thing that I'm trying. You
got this, girl.
Trying it for 3 months. We'll see how I do afterwards. But it's been nice, honestly. Like me sitting in my bed, going, I don't want to go, and then just saying like, "Go, you're gonna go do it." Like, oh, I think you and I were talking, with Leia about Eat That Frog. It's a book called Eat That Frog, and it talks about like, what's the
not
word?
Literal frogs.
No, it's not a literal frog. It talks about like avoiding procrastination. Oh my gosh, wow. And how to like not procrastinate. And so you do the thing that makes you scaredest first. Scaredest? Makes you the most
scared? I don't know. Sounds good. I understand.
First, and then you everything else is easier after that. And so just getting to the gym, honestly, is the hardest thing for me. And then once I'm in it, I'm totally fine. But it's like the mindset before you get there.
That's also performance anxiety, because every time even before most of these shows, my body's like preparing itself in this scared, strange way.
Yeah.
And then once you're on, it's like you're in the zone. But I think that's normal. I think that's like a universal thing too. Like your body will prepare you for these things, but you have to make that last push, right? So you're getting sick, you don't want to go, but once you make the last choice, it sets you on your path, you know?
Yeah, your mindset is everything. Like if you say, I'm going to fail, this is going to suck. It is going to suck, and you probably will fail at it because it's so in your head that it's not going to be great. If you say to yourself, this is going to be great, I'm going to do it anyway, it might not be the best, but you're still going to feel better about it, right?
For showing up, right?
Showing up. You have to show up for yourself.
Who else is gonna, right?
Exactly. And it's important to be able to trust, to be able to lean on others. But if you can't lean on yourself, then, it's a big thing to like start. It's a big part of self-care is being able to lean on yourself and know when you need things, especially if you're in some kind of caretaker role, or even if your job isn't a caretaker kind of role, or you're not a parent or a caregiver in a formal sense. If you're a giver and you're constantly connecting to other people's needs and you're putting other people's needs before your own all of the time, to kind of be able to feel whatever is going on inside that says like, I need to pause and I need to put something into my own cup because it's feeling a little low right now and I'm not getting that from anywhere else. I have to be the one that's going to refill it and find situations that others could refill it, right? Like we shouldn't have to always do it for ourselves, but find ways in which that can happen.
Boundaries, boundaries, right? It's like no one wants to put up boundaries. Who wants to do that? But I think you have to.
They're healthy.
I don't want to.
I'm like, kids bump up against walls that we give them, not because they want to knock them down, but because they want to know that they're keeping them safe and that they're going to keep them contained. And so when we set boundaries for ourselves, it helps us to feel safe. So if I have, you know, a family who's really upset and they're going through a very traumatic experience, one, I know that their anger is not because I am a terrible therapist. It's not because I am completely failing at my job. It's because, hi, Lenny. It's because they're in a bad place. So one, that's a boundary that I can set for myself, is like that awareness of knowing what somebody else is bringing to me. That's their energy. It's not mine. I'm not going to receive that energy and make it my own. So that's one boundary. The other boundary is also like a verbal boundary, and saying, you know, you can try and have a productive conversation when you start to notice that it's no longer productive. Saying, I'm noticing that this is no longer a productive conversation. And, you know, I'm going to give us 10 minutes to take a break. I want to continue to hear what you have to say. I want us to be able to do it in a safe way. So I'm going to give us both 10 minutes and I'm going to come back. And then the coming back piece is super important. Don't just say, I'm going to come back and then you never show up again. It's coming back, because that like rupture and repair in that relationship will actually strengthen the relationship versus that person move further away from you.
Yeah, because that's a natural flow, right? And there's no one way of a flow. I love how well you communicate. It's wonderful. It's good. You're a great listener, and that's part of it. That's part of the problem with empathy and listening. It's like, when you don't consciously like cut off your heart and your ears, right? You have to just like let it go through you and process it naturally, and then do self-care, right? It's not, you don't just shut off when you like, what do you do?
So this is actually a conversation that I have with one particular coworker, especially at work right now. But it's really hard. So one is what I was just saying, and like noticing what somebody else's and what's actually mine, as far as emotions are concerned. The other piece is that vicarious trauma is a real thing. So when you're working with people who've gone through a traumatic event and you're talking to them all day, every day, and that's all you're doing, you can set that boundary, but you're still going to be exhausted. So you have, like I was saying, you have to find ways to refill your cup. You have to be able to turn off. And so sometimes that means not sometimes, it should mean that if per your job description, it's okay to do this, you're not checking email when you get home from work. When you're home and you're present. I set a hard boundary for myself as best as I can to get all of my paperwork done at work, so that I'm not doing paperwork at home, because then I'm thinking about those cases at home, and I don't want some of those things to bleed into a fun night that I'm supposed to have. It's also about talking to the people that you care about, whether it's your significant other or your family. And one, they should be aware of like how it's affecting you, but also you have to be attuned to like what they're able to handle as well. Like, I had a patient pass away unexpectedly, and I had to, at the time I was seeing somebody, and he didn't choose to sign up for this kind of job. I was really emotional in that moment. It was the first time I'd had a patient pass away, and he was super supportive. And then we had to have a conversation that I had to honor his feelings too, that these are really hard things for him to hear. And we had to create our own language around, like, when I say I had a really bad day, that means we're not going like a really, really bad day. Like, we're not going to talk about it because it's not something that like you're able to hold on to, because that's not your stuff. Like, this is my job. but we can find ways for you to still support me in other ways. But then finding other people in your life who you can talk to about those things is really important as well. Being in therapy for yourself is also very, very important. And also communicating with your boss. So I was on our brain injury team for a long time. And at first it was very much like an in my brain decision, like, oh, this is going to be great for my resume. Like, I'm going to learn so many things and this is going to like really, really boost me as a clinician. And at first it was like, I was learning so many things. And then we just kept getting really, really, really difficult cases. One was more difficult than the next. And it like felt like I couldn't catch a break. And so then I started having thoughts like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. This job isn't for me, whatever it is. And so I had a talk with my boss, and she was like, I was terrified to tell my boss, like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. Like, I don't think I'm strong enough for this. I don't think I have the emotional bandwidth to be able to manage this intense kind of emotion. And her response wasn't, okay, well, you should go find another job and I'll support you in that. It was, how can we help you feel more successful here? And what kind of population do you feel most comfortable working with, so you can set those healthy boundaries for yourself, because you are a good clinician and we are a better facility because you're here. Aww. So there's a place you that helps you feel like you're getting what you need out of the job. We don't want you burnt out. We want you feeling like jazzed up by work. So how can we set that up for you? And so it was me having to put my pride aside and not saying like it was a failure that I, didn't want to work on the brain injury team anymore. It was just that as far as like my own self-care and my boundaries for myself, I am more successful working on other teams in the hospital. And like, I think I'm okay with that. Like, it's been much better since I made that shift for myself.
Yeah. So, right. Every time we communicate out of our comfort zone, things usually work in our favor, right? Which is, it's hard. It's like, who the fuck wants to do that?
I know.
So I'm going to just jump forward and then backward, because we could go over and I'll be upset. So I could talk to you all night. I know that already. And we've done it before.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it again. So I asked my guests, I don't know if you said it already, but to bring a deep quote and or enlightenment experience to share.
Sure. I think I've sprinkled a couple of quotes throughout, but
you did. Y'all lie. That's why I'm like, I hope you did do it already.
So one of mine, I think if I swipe out of here, it's not, I don't want to like mess up the show. I have it typed on my phone. But it's by Carl Rogers, who is a humanistic psychologist. And essentially he says that the good life isn't just about being happy. It's about the process of becoming. And that once you feel comfortable with who you currently are, that's when you can change. And it's not saying that you have to change. It's just that saying and accepting and understanding where you are in the present moment that kind of guides you to where you could go next. Because if you're not honest with yourself about where you are in the present moment, any kind of change that you do try to make, it might not seem feasible or successful because you're not being honest with where that true start point is. And I think, so like I said, I've always been very opinionated and I make sure that my needs are met, like or communicated, sorry, not that they're met, they're communicated. And I remember, going through like different dating processes or things like that. I know. that by the time I would start to date somebody else, I felt like a fraud. Like, you're not getting the real me, because who I was like before that person, like she was more innocent and she was carefree and she did all these things, and like I might be dressed up and looking nice on this date, but like I don't feel like I'm being my true authentic self with you. So I feel like I need to purge all of these like dirty things, like this raw stuff that I'm feeling inside. And then some people are like, that's a lot. That's a lot. And a really powerful thing that somebody said to me was like, you know, you don't have to lead with, in my last relationship, I da 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 da. And it like was like a huge shift for me, because it's like the person who is sitting in front of you is seeing you who you are right now. And so it's okay that you're different than who you were in the past. Kind of getting to know who you are now and being present with yourself is more important than just kind of harping on who you were in the past. And if you want to go back to some of those things, then maybe that change is going back to some of those things. I think for me, where I am right now is like really focusing on, obviously, self-care, but like doing the things that really make my life feel more simple, even though I'm adding things to my life, if that makes any sense. So like, I really like cooking. I really like being out in the garden. I like things that keep me busy, but that are like very mindful tasks where it helps me to stay in the present. Otherwise, my head will be spinning with different thoughts. And so it feels like it makes time slow down and makes life feel a little bit more simple, like I was saying. So the change that I'm working on making for myself right now is continuing with those things and not trying to forge anything for myself, but to just kind of like let things happen as they will. And being an active player in that, not just kind of being passive and letting things happen to me. I think we play a big part in manifesting things for ourselves.
You said that. You said it, not me. Yeah, no, manifesting, what a word. I do believe, like, I'm learning, relating to that, as we get older, age gives us the space and understanding to learn and adapt and create more for ourselves. And even manifesting, like kids aren't like, oh, I'm going to manifest my life, you know, they don't know what the hell's going on. But as we get older, we realize writing and speaking and energy, that's manifesting, right? Because movement is manifesting. But life gets more complicated. So if you ground yourself in those tools that you're doing, it becomes easier to handle the challenges that are thrown. And you face challenges every day where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
So what other self-care tips you got for us? Some books? You said the frog book.
Oh yeah. Let me think. I think it's just kind of, you know, getting back to hobbies that you really like. So as an example, I love crocheting.
Thanks, Grandma. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, garden, I bake, I crochet. I do ride horses, so that's less grandma-ish, but I do like grandma kind of tasks.
Talk about horses. We didn't talk about horses enough.
Oh, my horses. Yeah, so talking about like being happy with where you are and not harping on who you were in the past. So I'm 30. I started riding when I was 14, and I was riding 6 to 7 days a week at like the height of my riding career. And then I went to grad school and I was far from my horses, and I just started picking it up again, trying to go once a week. And I remember like going back to that perfectionistic thing I was saying about myself before, like if I couldn't go 3 days a week, like it was carved into my head, like to be show ready, like 3 days a week is at minimum is a must. 1 day a week is enough for my brain to feel satisfied. and also for my muscles to catch up because they are no longer where they were, and they let me know that. So just doing it once a week is enough, and it's super fun.
So you earlier, just out of curiosity, you said something where you can help people with physical disabilities ride horses. How does that work?
So it depends on like what the disability is, obviously, but our program spent a lot of time focusing on the anatomy of the horse and the anatomy of the person, and kind of looking at the biomechanics of each and how to appropriately select a horse based on the physical needs of that person. So as an example, if somebody who has Down syndrome typically needs a wider base of support, they also can have like instability in like the higher part of their spine, and if they do, then it's contraindicated for them to ride. So they actually can't ride, so they have to provide certain medical documentation for them to be able to ride. But if somebody needs like a wider base of support, they have like looser muscles, I'm going to put them on a wider horse that's a little bit slower, not going to be as bouncy, to kind of support their body habitus. If I have somebody who maybe has cerebral palsy and they're a little bit tighter, I'm going to put them on more of a narrow horse because then that will be more comfortable for them to be on. I had a little girl who had cerebral palsy in college, and she was nonverbal, and we were trying to come up with ways for her to communicate to tell her horse to walk on. And so because of her muscle tone, she couldn't sit up. And so we would have her lay on her belly. So if like the horse's head is here and the tail is here, she would lay, it's called prone, over the barrel of the horse. So like on her belly over the horse. And we had a whole team around her. There was one person leading, one person behind to make sure she was balanced, one person on either side of her, and then there was me. And every time we would stop the horse, we would say, okay, ask your horse to walk on. And I would squeeze her hand a little bit. And so we would say, walk on. And then we would make the horse walk as soon as I squeezed her hand. And so I was teaching her that if she squeezed our hand, that meant the horse would walk. And it took a couple tries, and then it would get to the end. We would be stopped, and before I could even get to her hand, her little hand was like going like this on the side of the horse before I could put my hand in hers. So just like working on communication skills, like there's so many different things that you can do. You can build in routines. So like this wasn't my student, but somebody in the program had worked with somebody who they were on the spectrum, autism spectrum, and they had to learn a certain bus route to get to work and to know how to get off at a certain bus stop. And so in our arena, they created the same progression of bus stop signs that they would see on their bus route. And they practiced doing the whole thing, getting on the horse at this spot and getting off the horse at that spot. And then they were able to start independently taking the bus to work. Another one of my friends in the program had a little student who also was on the autism spectrum, and he would only drink Pediasure. But then Pediasure did this awful thing where they changed their packaging, so he didn't know that it was the same Pediasure. And so we were helping him to practice drink out of a Riesel cup, so that no matter how many times they changed the packaging, still drink it. And so we put him on a horse that didn't know how to drink. And, after extensive exercise, you get thirsty, you have to drink. But we had to teach Barley how to drink. So we would do his lesson where he would ride and whatever. And then he would get off. We would have a bucket. All of us had cups. And we had to take a sip out of our cup to show Barley how to take a drink out of his bucket. And the horse, being the horse, put the bucket in his face and he would take a drink. And by the end of the semester, the kid was drinking out of his cup and eating pretzels.
Wow, this is a whole nother world like no one knows about.
Yeah, it's super fun, and it's actually really it's big within the horse world, but again, if you don't know about it, you don't know about it. I'm not doing hippotherapy, which is done by PTs and OTs. So I can't call myself a hippotherapist. That's more of like PT and OT utilizing the horse. That's really kind of similar to what I was talking about earlier with like biomechanics of both the human and the horse. But so mine really are riding lessons. I am teaching riding skills and life skills utilizing the horse.
It's so crazy. So it's really good for PWD and not all, obviously, but many. And that's oh, thank you for sharing that. Who knew?
Yeah, and there are different certifications for it. Like equine facilitated psychotherapy is also becoming bigger.
So are you going to shift? We only have a few minutes.
I know. So eventually I'd like to get there. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's the goal?
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Well, I support you, my sis.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any last words of, so I guess self-care, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think just really leaning on your village is super important. Again, if everybody is doing a little bit, that really matters a lot. And it doesn't matter what size your village is. Maybe your village is just your dog who lays and stares at you while you
I heard her the whole time. She's so cute. She was like,
Yeah. Maybe your village is a whole family. Maybe it's a best friend, whoever it is. So like find your people, keep those people, talk to those people, reach out if you need help. Really reach out if you need help. It doesn't matter what kind of help it is. And just find the things that like spark joy, like that really just keep your cup full. And find
keep my cup full.
You keep my cup full.
No.
I'm telling you, that hug in Spot, that was a home hug. You know that hug that you get from somebody at home when you haven't been home for a long time and they just know what kind of hug you need? That was the kind of hug that was.
Well, you're going to get one soon when you come out here.
I'm looking forward to it.
Bringing out soon, right? I think.
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. You're the best. You know, I could talk to you forever. And actually, I'm going to come back on soon.
Perfect. I love that.
And we'll just hang out. We'll pick a topic. And
Perfect.
We'll talk, you know?
Perfect. You and I can talk forever.
I know. I love it. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I hate to say goodbye, but I'll talk to you offline. But good night, everyone else.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Jess. You're the best. Keep going.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Love you. Bye.
Love you.
Wow. Jess is the best. Oh, man. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I see you, horse lover, and Jess and Ashley. Thanks for coming. And wow, a lot of people. Mario, Sean. Anyways, thank you for everyone for coming. And see you next week. Much love and blessing.